Hello everybody, MassDamnTG here, and today I'm bringing you a deck tech for my Freyalise Llanowar Fury Tribal Elf Commander deck. Freyalise is a 5-drop, 3 loyalty planeswalker with a +2 ability to create a 1/1 green elf druid creature token onto the battlefield that can tap for 1 green mana, a -2 ability that can destroy a target artifact or enchantment, and a -6 ability that can draw you cards equal to the amount of green creatures you control. I decided on Freyalise as my commander because of her versatility and her choices she gives you. But the main reason I picked her is because of her ultimate, her -6, giving, since this is a mono green deck, you don't have a lot of card draw. And being able to draw cards equal to the amount of green creatures you control is very good in this deck, especially for the amount of elves you want on your battlefield. So, let's get started with our lands. I run a total of 34 lands, and let's start off with the non-basics. The first one is Wirewood Lodge. Wirewood Lodge says tap for 1 generic mana, or you can tap a green to untap target elf. So being able to untap your elves and tap them again for mana is generating you lots of mana and getting you ahead on your opponents. Next we have Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. Since we're running a monocolor deck with this, we're able to generate lots of mana from our green permanents. And our last non-basic land is Castle Garenbridge. In my opinion, it's just a better forest in this deck, and you can pay 4 and tap it to add 6 green mana to your mana pool. You can only cast creature spells with this, but in this deck, it revolves around creatures, so on turn 4, even turn 3, having 6 mana in your mana pool is very good. And the rest are non-basic lands, basics. So, next, let's go with our artifacts. I only run 2 artifacts in this deck. The first one is 1000-Year Elixir. This says you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though the creatures have had haste. So being able to tap your elves for mana once you cast it is very powerful. And it has another ability where you can pay 1 generic mana to tap it to untap target creature. So just like Wirewood Lodge, being able to untap your elves, tap them again for mana is very strong. And our last artifact we run is Throne of the God Pharaoh. Throne of the God Pharaoh reads, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life to the number equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. So the amount we're gonna tap for mana. At the end of our turn, we're gonna be draining our opponents for so much life. Let's go on with our enchantments. The first one is Concordant Crossroads, giving everybody's creatures haste, but more importantly, giving your own creatures haste. Treble Elves is such a fast deck that we can abuse this more than our opponents. Sylvan Library, one of the better draw spells we have in green. Being able for you to draw additional 2 cards each your turn if you pay 4 for the extra cards is very strong. And in Commander, since we start off with 4 life, 4 life per card is not that much. Survival of the Fittest, one of the best tools we have in green. Being able to discard a creature card from our hands to search up any card we want from our library is very awesome. Carpet of Flowers, since in my playgroup there's a lot of blue players, so being able to generate mana off of players playing islands is just very good. Next we have Leyline of Abundance. Just like all the other Leylines, if you have it in your opening hand, you may start with it on the battlefield. And then it has whenever you tap a creature for mana and additional mana, so all our elves are going to be tapping for 2 instead of 1, so we're going to get us ahead in the game. And then it has another ability where you can pay 8 into it to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I usually don't use this ability, but in the late game where I don't have my win conditions in my hand or I don't have a way to get them, I am able to put mana into this to pump up all my creatures to see if I can win that way. Then we have Kenris Transformation. It is an enchantment aura. When it enters the battlefield, I draw a card, and I can enchant a creature, and it loses all abilities and becomes a 3/3 green elk. So since green doesn't have a lot of creature removal, it's one of the ways I'm able to get rid of problematic creatures. And lastly, for enchantments, I have Growing Rites of Itlamog, which turns into Itlamog, Cradle of the Sun. So it taps for 1 green mana, or you can tap for a green mana for each creature you control. So it's similar to a guy's Cradle, but not as expensive. So since we're done with our enchantments, let's go with our sorceries. The first sorcery here is Sylvan Scrying, being able to search off any land from your library and put it into your hand. So with this, I usually search out my Nykthos to being able to have access to more mana. Elvish Promenade, being able to create more elves equal to amount of elves I control. Finale of Devastation. This is a tutor and also a win con in this deck. In the early games, I'm able to switch up more Mad Dorks to wrap myself up, or in the late game, if I have a lot of mana, I'm able to put it into Finale of Devastation and get all my creatures plus X and haste, or switch up one of my win conditions, which is Crater Hoof. Eldritch Evolution, another one of my tutors in the deck. Overwhelming Stampede. One is similar win condition of pumping all my creatures with plus X, where X is the amount of creatures I control, and they also gave them trample. Natural Order, another one of my tutors in this deck. Regrowth, one of my few ways to get cards back from my graveyard back to my hand. Green Sun Zenith, another one of my tutors. And lastly, one of the funnest cards in this deck, Pro's Whim. Pro's Whim reads, for each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend searches their library for a land card, puts it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffles their library. Each foe sacrifices an artifact or enchantment they control. So normally for your opponent, you're going to be choosing foe for them. But since it's commander, you want to be political, you might help out your opponent by giving them a land. In return, they might have to do something for you. So it's a very fun card to play. Next, let's go with our instance. We have Worldly Tutor, another tutor in our deck. I decided to pull on a lot of tutors in this deck because I want to have a way to find my win condition, which is Crater Hoof, as soon as possible, so I don't have to drag out the game and maybe not be able to win. Then we have Return to Nature. We have a way to destroy a target artifact or enchantment, and also get rid of a target card from a graveyard by exiling it. Shared Summons, another one of my tutors, but this is a more costly tutor. It's a 5-drop, but it also lets you search up 2 creature cards, and it's also, you can cast it on instant speed. Nature's Claim, another way to get rid of an artifact or enchantment. Beast Within, one of our only ways to destroy a permanent in this deck. It's a staple green card in any commander deck that runs green. Heroic Intervention, being able to give all my creatures hexproof and indestructible. So if an opponent wants to board wipe, I'm able to play this and protect my board, or with against target removal, give all my permanents indestructible. And then lastly, we have Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer reads, draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and black spells this turn. So this is just a very strong card overall, just for 1 mana, being able to give you and your person control hexproof from blue and black, being able to draw cards off your opponent's casting blue or black spells, and most importantly, having your spells not being able to be countered. So when you know you're gonna win, you cast this and make sure you protect all your spells. Now let's go to our non-elf creatures. First, we have one of the strongest creatures in this deck, Seedborn Muse. Seedborn Muse says, untap all permanents you control during each other play's untap step. This pairs really well with another card you're about to see in a little bit. Regal Force, one of our only few ways we have to draw a card in this deck. Regal Force reads, when Regal Force enters the battlefield, draw a card for each green creature you control. So it's basically Freyalise's ult. Wirewood Symbiote, a way so we can untap our creatures so we can tap them again for mana, but we have to return our elf we control back to our hand, which is not that hard to do. Collector Oof, since we don't run a lot of artifacts in this deck, this does not affect us at all, but there's a lot of opponents who do run artifacts, so being able to shut them off is very powerful. Bellowing Tangleworm, if your opponents have a lot of blockers and you don't have a way to get around them, you cast this guy and it gives all your other green creatures Intimidate. So if they don't have any green creatures, they're not going to be able to block your creatures. Scribe Ranger, another way we're able to untap our creatures so we can tap them again for mana, but this time we have to return a forest we control back to our hand. Grave Shifter. Grave Shifter reads, when Grave Shifter enters the battlefield, each player chooses a creature type and returns any number of cards of that type from his or her graveyard to his or her hand. It's very good in the late game. Soul of the Harvest. It reads, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Runic Almasaur. Runic Almasaur reads, whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. So this is very good just to have on the battlefield and being able to draw cards off of actions your opponents are going to be doing anyway. Eternal Witness, another way we can grab a card from our graveyard back to our hand. Great Oak Guardian. Great Oak Guardian reads, when Great Oak Guardian enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until end of turn. You may untap them. So I really don't use it for the overrun effect a lot. I mostly use it so I'm able to tap my elves an additional time by untapping them and tapping them again in a way so we can generate more mana. Acidic Slime, a way to get rid of a target artifact, enchantment, or land. And then lastly, our main win condition in this deck is Craterhoof Behemoth. Craterhoof Behemoth reads, when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. It's a very strong card in this deck. Next, let's go to our elves that gain us mana. First, we have Elvish Archdruid. It has other creatures you control get +1/+1, and you can tap them so you can add green mana to your mana pool equal to the amount of elves you control. We have Birchlord Rangers. It reads, tap 2 untapped elves you control, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So in the early game, this helps out a lot. Elvish Heartbringer. Oh, I butchered that name. This reads, when Elvish Heartbringer comes into play, you may search your library for an elf card, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put it on top of it, and it also taps for 1 mana of any color. Wirewood Chandler. This one taps for X mana of any color to your mana pool, or X a number of elves in play, so not just yours, your opponents too. In a similar fashion, we have Priest of Titania, one of my favorite cards. She reads, add green mana to your mana pool for each elf in play, not just yours, your opponents as well. And then we have the stack of mana drops that everybody knows: Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Arbor Elf, Finhorn Elves, Boreal Druid, Devoted Druid, the ones that are like the staple mana drops in any green deck. And then we have Llanowar Tribes, where this one is it tests for 3 mana, but it's also a 3/3, and you have to pay 3 for him. Wood Elves, you're able to search your library for a forest and put into your battlefield untapped. And then lastly, we have Heritage Druid, one of a really good way to produce mana in this deck. Being able to tap 3 elves to add 3 mana to your mana pool is very strong. And then going on to our utility elves, we have Elvish Visionary, being able to draw a card when it enters the battlefield. Fierce Empath. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature with converted mana cost 6 or greater, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So search up our Craterhoof so we can win the game. Viridian Shaman, being able to destroy a target artifact when it enters the battlefield. Oracle Modiah, a very strong card in this deck. It reads, you may play an additional land on each of your turn. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play at the top card of your library if it's a land. So it's a good way to filter out the lands on top of your library so you won't have to draw them. Elvish Champion. It gives other elves +1/+1 in Forest Walk. Chameleon Colossus. It has Chainlink, so it's every creature type, so it's an elf as well. It has protection from black, and then you can pay 4, and it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is its power. So in the late game, you're able to pump him up to be very enormous, and you can take on an opponent just with this card. Quirion Ranger, another way we can untap our creatures and tap them again for more mana, and this time we have to return a forest to our hand. Reclamation Sage, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Beast Whisperer, when you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Rishkar Pima Renegade. I really love this card in this deck. I feel like not a lot of people run this card. It reads, whenever Rishkar Pima Renegade enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each up to 2 target creatures. Each creature you control with a counter on it has tap at a green mana to your mana pool. So it's another way to put a body on your battlefield, also being able to give other creatures a way to tap for mana. List Alana Hubmaster. This reads whenever you cast an elf spell, you may put a a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token onto the battlefield. So in a way to get more elves so you can overrun your opponents. Azuri Renegade Leader. Another one of our win conditions, being able to put a lot of mana into the second ability, where it reads pay 5 elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample. So another way we can overrun our opponents. And lastly is one of my favorite cards, Yeva Nature's Herald. She reads, she has flash. You may cast green creature cards as though they had flash. So this pairs very well with Seedborn Muse. Being able to cast your creature spells on your opponent's turn is very strong. And that is my Freyalise Llanowar Fury Commander deck. If you have any ideas of what I should take out or add into this deck, let me know in the comments down below. And have a wonderful day.